To build a successful business, you must start small and dream big. Aliko Dengati. You have the power to be the boss of your own life. I'm your host, Monica Allen. I'm a wife, mom, entrepreneur, best-selling author, lifelong learner, and your biz bestie. I have a love and passion for all things small business. Growing my own company from $700 to over 7 figures annually, my goal is to bring you inspiration, business-focused topics and tips, encouragement, and a community that helps you launch, grow, and scale your business, whether you are a dreamer, a side hustler, or a seasoned entrepreneur. You are listening to the Become Your Own Boss podcast. One of the things that I could have used when I first started my business was a succinct checklist of all the things I needed. Instead, I found most of what I needed by stumbling over it or through trial and error. Sometimes while trying to do one thing, I would find that I needed to have another step completed first. I found it to be somewhat of a frustrating and busy time because all I really wanted to do was focus on our customers and our plans to grow the business. Though all the legal documentation is definitely not the most exciting part to starting a business, it is necessary to make sure your business is set up properly and to make sure you can conduct business in the most professional manner. Welcome to Kickstart Your Business Part 4, the boring but necessary parts of doing business. Now that you have proven that your product or service has value in the marketplace and you've settled on a name for your business, it's time to walk through some of the steps to get your business legitimized in these streets. Please note that you will need to refer to your specific state rules and guidelines, as well as your specific city rules and guidelines for your business location. However, never fear, usually these questions can be answered by just a quick Google search. Let's jump into the things you need to get started in launching and growing your empire. I'm going to start this out with a caveat because you may not do these things in the order in which I'm going to go through them. I'm going to tell you my story, but your story may be slightly different, so you may go through it in a different order. When Ethan and I initially started our first business, we primarily started with a bank account and a resale certificate number. We knew that we wanted to provide products to people, and in order for us to buy those products, we wanted to be able to buy them wholesale. And in order for us to buy them wholesale, most wholesale vendors will require that you supply them with a resale certificate. Otherwise, they're going to charge you tax. And we didn't want that. We want to, of course, keep our margins as large as possible. So in order for us to do that, we had to get a resale certificate number, which exempts you from taxes, but does require you to apply sales tax to the end user, which is thus your customer. So let's start there. Opening a bank account. When we initially opened our bank account, we opened it using one of our social security numbers. I don't remember which one, whose number we used, but we originally opened it with a social security number, and we knew we wanted it to be a business account, so we did that. The great thing about making sure you have a business bank account is you want to ensure that you're running your business transactions, both revenue and expenses, entirely through that business account. This keeps your books clean and organized. This also makes it really easy to determine if you're making money in your business. You do not want to commingle your personal funds with your business funds. I know when people typically first start, they may do that because they're not quite sure yet that they're starting a business. So they may use their personal funds. They haven't yet opened a business bank account. But as soon as you see that you're getting some traction, you want to go ahead and open a business bank account, even if it's under your social security number. But that allows for you not to commingle funds. We're going to talk more about the resale certificate shortly. But before I do that, I want to talk about the Department of Revenue. At least that is what it's called in Georgia. And I'm sure it's called something very similar in all the other states here. The Department of Revenue in your state is typically where you pay taxes for employees, state taxes, as well as sales and use tax. So before I get to the resale certificate, and this is where Ethan and I kind of stumbled along because we knew we needed a resale certificate so we could buy from vendors and suppliers on a wholesale basis tax-free. But before we could do that, we learned that we had to set up a sales and use tax registration. We had to register for our sales and use tax because they want to know who's collecting taxes and who they should be looking for to collect taxes from. So once we had that registration through the Department of Revenue, then we were able to apply for our resale certificate number. Because again, they want to know who's collecting taxes on goods and who they should be planning to collect taxes from. Now, I've noticed a really big shift in vendors and suppliers when it comes to these resale certificates. And that big shift has been because the government really wants to make sure that they're collecting all of the tax revenue that they can. They are requiring suppliers and vendors to make sure that they have copies of these resale certificates and these forms completed from vendors or from their customers. And so I've had to fill out in the past 2 years, I've had to resubmit forms and kind of redo those things again because they want to make sure they have them on file to protect themselves should someone come to look at their business and ask them, why aren't you charging this company tax? Well, then they can pull out the form and show that we have a resale certificate number and we also are registered with our sales and use tax number through the Department of Revenue. I know that can sound a bit convoluted, but again, these are the things that you have to take care of as you grow in your business, especially if you're a product-based business. You will need to do these things. Now let's talk about your resale certificate number. This certificate is issued by your state. It allows you to purchase items wholesale without having to pay sales tax on them, if sales tax is applicable in your state. And truthfully, this may be called something else in your state, but you do want this if you're selling products that are going to be taxed. This usually means that you're reselling the goods and will charge tax to the end user, as I mentioned before. Many vendors will ask you for your resale certificate prior to them letting you set up an account and purchase items wholesale and tax-free. Here in Georgia, there is no fee for this registration. Once Ethan and I had those pieces in place, we then set out to open a merchant services account. You want to have a merchant services account because it allows you to take your customers' or clients' credit cards. And there's so many options for this today. I think when we started, we primarily did PayPal, but you can do your bank where you set up your bank account, or you can do a different financial institution. There's now Stripe and Shopify, Square, and there's also things like Cash App and Venmo, but I'll talk about those a little bit in a second. Each one of these companies will have a different rate or percentage of how much they take from each transaction, which is why a lot of people like Cash App and Venmo and things like that. Some of the merchant services companies will even charge you a percentage plus a flat rate per transaction. You as a business owner want to be aware of how they take their fees, because some of these companies will take their fees immediately with each transaction, while others will batch your fees and charge it back to you monthly or pull it from your account monthly. This is important to know because for cash flow, you need to understand if you are not getting those fees taken out on each transaction, then at the first of each month, you're going to get those fees taken out. And so it's not really revenue for you. And you need to keep that in mind. You also want to read their agreements for details. Truthfully, I still don't understand all of the jargon that they use in their agreements, but you want to know the basics. You want to know the percentage you're being charged and the per transaction cost. So if someone else comes along with a better deal, you can switch. Now, I mentioned things like Cash App, Venmo. There's also Zelle. And nothing's necessarily wrong with these, but I do think that they lend to a less professional look in business if you're taking these. And truthfully, the IRS have caught on to this. They've caught on to the fact that people are making money for their business through Cash App, but they're not paying taxes on that. So now Cash App, Venmo are having to remit forms to the IRS on who's getting what amount of money. So if you're not paying taxes on the money that you're getting through those apps, you will be at some point. So keep that in mind. I do believe, though, that having a merchant account set up where you're able to easily take someone's credit card makes you look more professional than telling someone to Cash App you. That may just be a personal opinion, but I believe in it strongly. Another thing I love about having a merchant services account is you can immediately have those funds sent to that business bank account that you've set up. And that's really great, again, for keeping your funds from being commingled with your personal funds. While I was recording this episode and I'm talking about Venmo and Cash App, I thought, you know what, let me do just a little bit of research because I wanted to give you all a little bit more insight into that because it's not something that we use on a regular basis. I have a personal Cash App account. I'm pretty sure Ethan does. We have a Venmo business account, actually, but we rarely use it. Occasionally, though, customers will say, well, I have Venmo. And so we will do that. But it's good to know that there are rules that the IRS has established. And so I want to share those with you so you're aware. And right now in 2023, if you have a business account set up with these platforms and you receive more than $20,000 or more than 200 transactions, the IRS requires those transactions to be reported on a Form 1099-K. And that information will be sent to you and the IRS. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're putting that on your tax return. And next year, or this year actually in 2024, the amount will be $5,000. So they're trying to gradually phase this in, which I think is pretty nice. You know, they're not going in all hard initially, but in 2024, it will be $5,000. Will be the threshold for reporting requirements. So just a side note. It's interesting because as I walk through the history of starting a business, it's been 22 years is what I figured out. Just recently actually hit me. I've been an entrepreneur now for 22 years. And as I go back, you know, some of it's a little blurry. I do remember doing all of these things. But as I was working through this particular episode, I forgot one piece, and that is getting our business license with the city. We did this actually before we incorporated because here in Georgia, you can get your business license, take your business license to the bank, and open a business account with a business license, but it's just attached to your social security number. So Ethan and I have actually done this for a number of different businesses, some together and some individually. I started an interior design business that I actually never incorporated, but I ran it as a sole proprietor. And so I kind of forgot that part, but that was what we initially took to the bank was our name that we came up with, that we registered with the city. We took that to the bank, opened our bank account, got our merchant account. We got all of the things together that we really needed to get going back in 2002. And as we began to gain a little bit of traction in 2003, we thought to ourselves, wow, we have something here. We had no idea that it would take off the way it did. And so in 2004, we decided, you know what, we really should incorporate our business. And there's definitely viable reasons you should incorporate a business. One of the biggest ones being limited liability protection. You want to separate your personal assets from your business assets. And that was the main reason. But there's other reasons to incorporate. There's tax advantages. I personally think it gives you credibility with other people when you have an Inc. or an LLC behind your name. We decided to do an LLC because we did consult an attorney. One of Ethan's fraternity brothers is an attorney, and he helped us incorporate. At the time, LegalZoom was a bit newer, and I didn't really feel comfortable with that. I really wanted to understand exactly what we were doing, and so he helped us incorporate as an LLC and file our articles of incorporation with the state of Georgia. So we got registered with the state of Georgia, and once we incorporated, we got our employer identification number, or EIN, from the federal government. He handled all of those pieces for us, and it was great just to get the things in the mail that says, hey, now you're registered with the state of Georgia. Hey, now you have your EIN number. And your EIN number is basically the social security number for your business. It is the same number we used back in 2004 that I use today when it comes to filling out loan paperwork or opening a new bank account, anything that we're doing. So that number is very vital and important. But some other reasons to incorporate, speaking of loans, is banks look at you with more credibility when you're incorporated. So it can make it a little bit easier to get capital. And it looks good to potential talent. And a business can last longer than you if you're incorporated. You can sell it. It's not necessarily attached to your personal name, so you can move on if you want to and sell it or leave it to someone in the family or someone else. It's completely up to you, of course. And your business can also begin to establish its own credit. So there's great reasons to incorporate. And so in 2004, we incorporated our business. And for me, it just really legitimized us being entrepreneurs, even more so than sole proprietor connected to your Social Security with a business name. It really made me feel legit, should I say. Another quick aside, even though Ethan and I did consult an attorney to establish our first EIN number, do know that you can apply for this yourself. And you can visit irs.gov to find out more information about completing the application. Many of these things you can do yourself. You can do your state registration yourself. It's really about time, if you have the time, and money. So it's the variables, right? If you have the time, then do it yourself, especially if you don't yet have the money. If you have the money, then you can hire someone to do it for you. I recognize, though, that attorneys aren't cheap. And so we have applied for EIN numbers for some other businesses on our own, and you can do the same. Those are the steps that we took. That's our story when it comes to some of the legal things that we've had to, or hurdles that we've had to kind of jump over to get started. But again, every business is different. You may not be a product-based business. You may be service only. So some of these things may or may not apply to you. If you're in restaurants, if you're in the restaurant business or the hospitality industry, you're talking about a whole different set of perhaps rules and regulations. There are different permits and different licenses for when you're dealing with food and alcohol. So I can't really speak to those industries because I'm not in it. And dare I not even try to delve into the intricacies of those industries. But do your research. Learn what you need to legitimize your business. You'll feel better about it. You'll feel really good about it, even though they can be tough hurdles to jump over. I do want to give you just a concise summary of the things that I touched on today. And again, some of them may be relevant to you and some of them not, but most of them will be relevant to you no matter what type of business you're in. And that is opening a business bank account, or 3 or 4, because you actually, as your business grows, you will want more than one bank account. And we can talk about that another day and why you want more than one and that type of thing. Set up a merchant services account so you can take credit cards. Get your city license if that's required in the city you're operating in. Get it a resale certificate number. Get your state registration. Get your tax ID number, which is part of getting incorporated. Get your Department of Revenue registration. And last but not least, which this is one that I didn't dive into a whole lot because if you're just getting started, you may not have employees just yet. But when you do get ready to hire employees, you will need a Department of Labor registration. This may be called something different in your state. However, it will be similar in its function. The Department of Labor is the department that administers federal labor laws, like the minimum wage, for example. Here in Georgia, they also handle unemployment claims. They hold an unemployment fund. So if people are unemployed, they can file for unemployment and they can get it from the state. There's also a federal unemployment bucket, but I won't get into all that. That comes off also when you begin to pay employees because as an employer, there are certain matches that you have to have. We will not dive into all that today. Just know that you will need to do some research when you get ready to hire people as to what is needed. If you have a payroll company, which I do recommend getting once you start hiring people, a lot of times they will have an HR arm to them and they can help you with a lot of these things. But I want to leave you with that. Those are the kind of high level things that as you walk through your business, you will need. But until that time, don't stress about it. I love this book that I read some years ago called Eat That Frog. And it's really about taking one bite at a time and handling one thing at a time and just getting over each thing and moving through it to get your business set up properly. And that way you can focus on the successful pieces and the strategy of growing your empire. Thanks for listening today. Please take a moment to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I do want to reiterate the word share. If you know someone that desires to start a business, has talked about being an entrepreneur, someone who's just getting started and may seem a little bit lost on some things, or someone who just honestly may be miserable in their job and you think would make a great entrepreneur, please share this podcast with them. Also, take a moment to join the Become Your Own Boss community on Facebook. That is where we are aiming to build a community that supports entrepreneurship so you don't have to walk through this alone. Simply click the link in the show notes to join the Facebook group. Stay tuned for more insights on launching, growing, and scaling your business as we continue the Kickstart Your Business series. Remember, I'm here to be your biz bestie every step of the way. Also remember, now is the time. Not tomorrow, not a month from now, but now is the time to level up, leave a legacy, and become your own boss.